We're good to go? Oh, yes, sir. Okay. Call the rules meeting. First order of business is we need to allow a vote for move and second to allow Mr. Fennell to participate via teleconference.
So moved.
Mr. Rand, Ms. Williams. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Can you hear us okay, Mr. Fennell?
Yes, I do. Thanks.
So I'll move to take them together with approval of the minutes October 27th, 2020 and June 10th, 2021.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rand, second by Ms. Williams. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 We have a discussion item. As many know, we have to adopt temporary rules of order to govern for the next board. That will be happening in December. That new board will then also meet and create their own rules. It's a discussion, so we would have to have a vote probably before the next board meeting to bring the rules forward. So no action will be taken here today on these rules other than discussion. So many of you have seen the rules. I'll let Secretary, or I was giving you a promotion to Secretary of State, but the state's attorney discuss one of the rule changes that we were looking to make, which wasn't very clear and kind of unprecedented from the board level. So
certainly. So the situation that arises this year that has been told to me has not necessarily come up before is that the presiding officer, which is Chairman Rand, he's not running for re-election. He'll be rolling off the board, so there's no presiding officer for your reorg meeting in December. And so there's a second unique layer that your vice president is also not running for re-election. So, if you were to default to the way things are when the chairman is not available, it would go to the vice chair. We don't have that scenario either. So we're looking at the rules and what made the most sense in this scenario. So drafted a one-sentence addition to the rules that says that
Jim Fennell.
that the chairperson will appoint, I think the designate is the word that was used, will designate a presiding officer for that reorg meeting. That reorg meeting is then just where the new board members are sworn in and you elect, I shouldn't say just, and you do the important thing, job of electing your chairperson and vice chairperson. Happy to answer any questions. It's just literally one sentence to specify that your outgoing chairperson will appoint a presiding officer for your reorg meeting. I do have one other typo, though, that we should, before you take this to a vote at your next meeting, and I can tell that to you now, or I can just give you, it's literally a typo, a reference to the wrong section in your reorg meeting bullet points. Let me find it. Article 1, Section 2 gives your order of business for your reorg meeting. And in J and L, Mr. Ricker pointed this out, and I concur, J and L reference Article 3, Section 2. And in J, it should be Article 3, Section 1A. And in L, it should be Article 3, Section 2A. So I can give those to county administration to add in.
Would you like a member to move to amend this document accordingly?
This is only up for discussion today.
Okay.
So I think that we're discussing this edit and others that I think we can get incorporated into the draft version that will be adopted by your committee at its next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Rand, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Dillon, when do you plan on hosting that meeting?
So the idea would try to be hosted before our next regular meeting so that we could have the temporary rules to be given to the board to set for it'll be our last meeting as a board in November.
Okay, so it would be prior to that meeting, the Rules Committee meeting?
prior to.
That would be correct, Madam Counsel.
If you want this current board, yeah, they need to vote on it at the November meeting. It's going to have to be held prior to, your rules committee will have to hold a meeting prior to, whether that's the day of, the hour before, or a separate date.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to get it out on the floor.
That was the one thing that really needed to be clarified. Another discussion that to be had was we've operated under, and I'm not looking to change the rules, but was just curious of board members' thoughts of we've operated under emergency order for 2 years, roughly. So our current rules do not allow for county board members to call in. They can call into committee. They cannot call into county board meetings. I figure that's something that the new board should probably look at instead of this board setting that as a temporary board. But for those of you running for that would still be around the horseshoe, I think it's an item if eventually emergency powers subside. So our rules state if there's a national emergency or a state declaration declared or a local declaration, the rules can be suspended for that order. So that would be a question of whether or not the new board would want to allow still a call-in option for our full board meeting. I don't know if that's something, thoughts or concerns about that. I know we've never allowed that in the past, but I think that is something that will probably go by the wayside with declarations. So that would we allow a board member to call in? I know many of us get called away for work, or something happens, family, but still would like to participate. I'm open to any suggestions that would be thoughts or concerns in that manner. Huh? I just want an opinion. Again, we're not taking any action on it, but I think that's a rule that the new board would set for itself, not this board setting for the next board.
Okay, then do you want to wait to have that discussion till then, or do you want to have it now?
I'm open to thoughts. I just wanted the board to think about it.
Okay.
You can, if you have comments.
I do. I believe that it should be suspended, that once the declaration emergency is over, I think we should not allow call-in.
Just some thoughts for the new board.
I would agree with Sharon, but I can't because I won't be here. I don't want to impose my thought on a future board, but where she speaks from on that, we've had reasons for allowing folks to participate, and they never permitted the general board meeting as one of them for good reasons. But I won't opine.
Yeah.
Let the new board make it up for themselves.
I don't disagree, but kind of in unprecedented times here in the last couple of years, and things have changed. So I just was curious if that was something that the board had an appetite to look at, or leave it as is. So that's out there just for anybody that wanted to think about it. And is there any other discussions for the rules?
Yeah,
Rand?
Mr. Chairman, will there be any other wholesale revisions of the rules going into the next organizational meeting of the board?
Not that I foresee, unless, so when we asked at the last board meeting if there was any questions, comments, or things that wanted to be changed about it, I've talked to some board members, but nobody called with suggestions or ideas to change it. So I don't believe staff was
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we didn't receive any feedback either.
So for the most part, these are the rules that have governed us forever, and at times they need tweaked as times change. But for the most part, I consider them a good set of standard rules for the board.
Has council had a chance to review whether we're in the 21st century with the document we have?
Are you referring to the calling into meetings or something?
The general set of rules that govern our business.
Yeah, they're all still, Robert's Rules of Orders are an antiquated set of rules, and we adopt those. So you do tweak as things arise, and it all seems to be a living, breathing document that is in good shape by my read.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't foresee any major changes, just other than this procedural move to clean up what is not defined. Any questions from the committee? Mr. Fennel back on. Any questions, Jim? We also have member Windish and member Steve Ricker here. Any questions or comments from other board members? You can call into committees, but it has to be a unanimous consent. So
Jimmy, I'm sorry I was on blocked out, but anyway, on the call-ins to meetings, I think that should be limited to just a few. Some people could abuse that. That's my only comment there.
don't disagree, Mr. Fennel. So we'll try to get this cleaned up and have it as a document that can be presented to vote on prior to send as a temporary rules of order to the next full board meeting. Then next we have miscellaneous. Then before we close it out, we do have members of the public. If somebody would like a public comment, now would be the time. Welcome, Ms. Alms.
Hello? Okay, thank you. Carrie Alms. So on the rules of order, it's just sort of like some housekeeping things, but like the headers don't all say like temporary 2022, 2023, so maybe you could clean that up. And my little grammar thing said you needed a comma after the word specifically. And then one thing about the public comment on the committees. So in talking with the state's attorney's office, it says under J on page 13, it says public comment, the chairperson of each committee may, with the consent of a majority of the committee, reasonably limit. I would ask that that would say the chairperson of each committee shall allow for public comment and may, with consent of a majority of the committee, reasonably limit, and so forth and so on. Because it doesn't really, the only thing that's really clearly says about citizens' comment is at a board meeting. And I just think that it would help to promote better communication between the public and the county, that they are willing to accept public comment, because the Open Meetings Act says any person shall be permitted an opportunity to address public officials under the rules established and recorded by the public body. And I just think if you make that clarification, the chairperson of each committee shall allow for public comment and may with the consent. And the other thing about calling into meetings, I think that the century that we live in, I think that other organizations, other governmental bodies have a call-in policy where someone who is the elected public official has to attest to the fact of why they're not at the meeting. So I would ask you to consider, if the person is ill, and they can attest to that, if the person is away on business of the body, so business of the county for some reason, and if the person is away on business of the business where they're employed. I think those are very valid exceptions to that, because many of you do work, you have other jobs, and you may not be able to come, and it may be a very important vote that is up, and it may also be a very close vote, and it may not turn out to be quite the way that, and there's emergencies and stuff like that. So I would ask that you would consider to make some limited exceptions that someone has to attest to, and they have to notarize their signature, so that would allow for more input of elected officials. And the last thing is, on the committee agendas, which isn't necessarily this thing, it's maybe a housekeeping thing, I would ask on the committee agendas that there would be an item that would say public comment. So people were very aware that you were embracing public comment and not just miscellaneous, that they're, swept in with the sweepings from the floor or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Any other public comment? Seeing none, and even just for a matter of confusion, just so that it says adoption of temporary 2022-2023 rules, but at the time, they're still the rules that govern this current board that will be passed to the next board. They will still have to adopt their own rules to govern them. So, and even though it says temporary, it's still really housekeeping of this current board's rules that need to be taken to pass on to the next board. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Jim.